Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new expanded deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at a little bit of a different Stoutland deck. Now, before I covered my Scoop Dog deck, which used the Stoutland from Cosmic Eclipse. If we just want to bring that up since we have a minute. Here we are. With its Arf Arf Bark to discard energy from your opponent's Pokemon, and you just loop this with Scoop Up Net. Today we're going to be covering a different type of Stoutland deck, and you may be just saying immediately, this is just worse than the Shocklock, and yes, it is worse than Shocklock. However, I think it's very fun, so I personally like this build more. If you know Shocklock, it's Raichu, Stoutland, you get Stoutland active and just paralyze every turn. It's a very solid deck. I'll cover it at some point, I just don't have anything unique to add, so I figured I wouldn't cover it yet. But this Stoutland deck is unique because it plays the Lillipup from Cosmic Eclipse with the baby doll eyes. This is the build round of the deck. The defending Pokemon cannot retreat during your opponent's next turn. So what you want to do with this deck is play against a deck where they play liabilities like Crobat or Dedenne and trap them, and then they cannot retreat, and you win by milling them. And some decks you just can't win. That's why this deck is worse than Shocklock. Like if your opponent just plays like all dark types, like an Eternatus deck or something like that, there's nothing to trap. You can't win. Shadow Rider, for instance, you can't win. But I think it's a very cool deck, so I wanted to build it. This is actually my first Stoutland build I ever did. Shout out to the person who gifted me 2 of these Stoutland Sentinels that led me to building this deck. This is actually a homebrew from scratch because I didn't have the pieces for Shocklock. So a little bit proud of this one. One of my favorite decks to play, although I play Scoop Dog more nowadays, I suppose. So what you want to do is you want to trap with Lillipup. 60 HP is nice. 1 retreat's nice. Herdier is great. I covered this in the Scoop Dog video, but it's got the treasure hunt. When you evolve it, you get to put an item card pile into your hand, so it allows you to reuse all these otherwise pretty tough to reuse item cards. And because you're not using pickup in this deck like the other Stoutland decks, getting to reuse these one-of items is actually very important. We'll get on to that in a bit, though. We have 2 copies of Stoutland here with the Sentinel ability. As long as you're active, your opponent can't play any supporter cards. So what you eventually do is you gust up something like, let's just say, a Dedenne that can't attack, and then, because they don't have the energy in their deck, and then you have your Sentinel, and you trap them with the Baby Doll Eyes attack, and they can't Guzma because if they, if they're trying to Guzma, it doesn't let them play it. So there you are. That's what the deck goal is aiming to do. We have 1 copy of Alolan Vulpix here. Search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon, reveal them, put them into your hand. I just wanted it as a good starter, honestly. This deck needs to set up its Pokemon, and it's a good starter, and it has a good evolution. You're not using any of their attacks, but it is Level Ball searchable, notable, as is Herdier. Stoutland's a little bit harder to search, but we'll get there. The reason you play Vulpix in particular instead of something like, Hisuian Basculin is because of Ninetales-GX. The Mysterious Guidance ability, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may search your deck for 2 item cards. The attacks are cool, but you're never using them. What you want to do here is you want to kind of turn this into a rush deck with Rare Candy, and you get the Stoutland out, and you get the Counter Catcher out. The second they take a prize, you get these 2, and you gust something up and trap it. Because you want to establish that trap as soon as possible, because some decks will have outs to traps. This is the expanded ladder, after all, not a tournament, so decks are going to play things like Rope and Switch and things like that. So you want to get that trap established as soon as possible, start hitting their resources, get to work. Have 1 copy of Bunnelby here. This is to just kind of increase our control consistency, allowing you to either take the 2 cards off of your opponent's deck, or burrow, discard the top card of your opponent's deck, Rototiller, shuffle card from your squad into your deck, and it can attack twice. Obviously, Bunnelby's great for just discarding the last 2 cards of your opponent's deck and taking win. Rototiller helps keep these items in the deck. There's a lot of like one-ofs here, and yeah, it's pretty good to get them. So Bunnelby's good. Ditto here can evolve in any stage 1, and because we just kind of have a few stage 1s here, like Herdier and such, you can evolve into it to toolbox that treasure hunt. I don't think it's the best slot in the deck. I played more stage 1s in the version of this deck that is outdated, so if you want to swap this for a another Pokemon like a Lillipup or a Vulpix or even like a Giraffe or something could fit in here, that could work. I just thought the other stuff that Ditto still worked, because I did want a treasure hunt still, while having a stage 2 out, but it's perfectly up to you. You know, if you so choose, you can switch it out. Again, this is not the theme deck format, so decks are changeable. My decks are not perfect. I build them with, you know, bias. One copy of Jirachi-EX with the Stellar Guidance ability. When you play it from your hand in your bench, you be strategic for a supporter card. With lots of supporter cards in this deck, Jirachi being level wall searchable is great, and you can also pick it up off the field with Scoop Up Net. So, also very great. Because you are going to put Sentinel active, that's not always the most relevant thing, honestly. I have one copy of Rotom V with the instant charge. This used to be a Zacian V, but Rotom V is obviously an upgrade from the brand new Lost Origins set, allowing you to just draw 3 cards and end your turn. And it has 1 retreat, so it's better than Zacian with the 2 retreat. It allows you to have consistency, and you're not going to be able to use it after a few turns, but you want those initial turns, you want to either be using Beacon or using Rotom or using Steven to end your turn. One copy of Shining Celebi with the Time Recall ability. Each of your evolved Pokemon can use the attack from its previous evolutions. So this deck wants to copy the Baby Doll Eyes. That's it. Yeah. I did have a different Pokemon line before Lost Origin came out. I did have the Alolan Muk. I had played 3 copies of Alolan Grimer, and then 2 copies of the Alolan Muk from Team Up, and 1 from Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon obviously works anti-theoretical to this deck because it turns off your own stuff, but in some matchups you just need to turn off, you know, basic abilities that bad, so it worked there. And you know, now we have Fortune Sisters, so you don't actually need to play Muk, so that's why the deck is a little bit different. I haven't tested with this list in particular, it's just an updated list for Lost Origin, so obviously there's things that can be changed. Have 2 copies of N. Each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck, then draw the card for each of his or her prizes. Usually when I play mill decks, I don't like to throw N in here, but this one is particularly good for punishing your opponent if they you know, knock out a bunch of Pokemon in the early game, so I do like N quite a bit. Putting your opponent down to a low hand size, and then trapping, and then recycling your Lusamines is always good. One copy of Marnie here. Each player shuffles their hand, puts it on the bottom of the deck, and then you draw 5, your opponent draws 4. Just a very good consistency in the early game. Yeah, you can potentially switch these out for Stevens, but Stevens is completely worthless once you have Stoutland set up, because you need to be using Baby Doll Eyes every single turn. One copy of Avery. Draw 3 cards. If you draw any cards in this way, your opponent discards Pokemon from their bench until they have 3. Potentially also run this as a parallel city, but I think I like Avery better because this deck plays Swell already. To keep, you know, Silent Labs out of play for your Celebi and things like that. You know, path the peak away from your Rotom, path the peak away from Jirachi, path the peak away from Alolan Ninetales. All of the above. I noticed I didn't. Oh yeah, I played Dowsing Machine. I was about to say it's misplaced. It should be right here. So you use this if your opponent fills their bench, like they say you're a trapping deck, they're just going to fill their bench with Pokemon that you can't trap. But then if they have it either in hand or in discard pile, you can Avery, draw 3, force them to discard parts of their bench, bring a Pokemon you want from either the discard pile or their hand back into play, and then gust it up. So, Avery's cool. You need to play it. 2 copies of Gladion. Look at your face down prize cards. Put one of them into your hand, then shuffle Gladion in. I don't like Peonia. Gladion's here because I like Gladion. 1 copy of Brigette. Search your deck for 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. You're not using the first effect. Use this to obviously your Lillipups, your Alolan Vulpix, usually not Bunnelby, a lot of times Celebi, Ditto. In Scoop Dog I had Winona. In this deck I think it's particularly important that you want Shining Celebi in play at all times, and Alolan Vulpix is also very good, so I would definitely play Brigette. 1 copy of Lysandre, switch one of your opponent's by Pokemon, his or her active Pokemon. Could potentially run 2, could potentially run a Guzma. Lysandre seemed to work fine. It's Counter Catcher, but you don't have to wait for your opponent to be behind prizes, and it's Supporter, so you can reuse it with Lusamine. 1 copy of Misfortune Sisters. Replacing the Alolan Muk from Team Up, we have Misfortune Sisters. Look at the top 5 of your opponent's deck and discard any number of items you find there. You want to discard Scoop Up Nets, you want to discard Switches, Escape Ropes, First Seekers, in case they get out of the lock. All of the above. This card's great. You're going to see this in a lot of my control decks now. It's just an incredible card for Expanded. 1 copy of Team Rocket's Handiwork. You can't just play Fortune Sisters, unfortunately. You do need to have Raw Mill. Flip 2 coins for each head to discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So, it's pretty terrible. You're only going to get 1 out of like 30 heads, but that 1 out of 30 heads is going to win you the game, so you play it. 1 copy of Steven's Resolve. Again, you could play 4 of this if you want. Search your deck for up to 3 cards, put them into your hand. I think 1's fine, because you can't use it after you use your Sentinel, so you can't like end your opponent to like 2 cards in hand and then set up Baby Doll Eyes. It's just not a play that Steven can do, because once you have Sentinel and Baby Doll Eyes combo out, you cannot use Steven. It is still useful for setting up your plays though, so potentially 2, maybe like I said, up to 4 if you just really need those pieces. 3 copies of Lusamine, put 2 in any combination of Supporter and Stadium from your battle into your hand, using that to get back your Swell to constantly keep Silent Lab and all that out of play, and also using it to get back your supporters. You want to get back your Fortune Sisters and your Team Rocket's Handiwork. You always want to have Lysandre available, either to a Verse Seeker or in hand. Getting Avery back, just in case you need to use it, though usually that's more Verse Seekerable. That's about all you need to know with Lusamine. 4 copies of Level Ball to search are Lillipup's Herdier, Vulpix, Bunnelby, Ditto. Again, Ditto can be switched out for whatever you want, but I think it's good. 1 copy of Shining Celebi, obviously, for the Level Ball as well. That's probably the most important thing, other than the main family. Searches a Pokemon with 90 HP or less. Evolution, and then searches any evolution. You can play like Quick Ball, Ultra Ball on this deck. I don't think you need to. So, with Level Ball, you can get, or with Evolution Incense, you can get your Herdiers, you can get your Alolan Ninetales, you can get, yeah, that's basically it. Stoutlands as well. That's the only way to search Stoutland. 1 copy of Hisui Ball. If you have Pokemon prize, especially if you have prize like 2 Lillipups, or if you prize Celebi is one of the main ones, then you want to get that out. 2 Gladions is great, obviously, but having a 3rd card that's just an item is also nice. 1 copy of Dazzling Machine. Discard 2 cards from your hand. Put a trainer from your script pile into your hand. As I said, all these cards are very thin. You want to be able to recycle your items that we'll be talking about in just a minute. 1 copy of Scoop Up Net. Put a Pokemon that isn't a V or GX into your hand. Can be used to reuse Treasure Hunt on the bench. Can also be used to scoop up Jirachi out of play, and that's also very good. 1 copy works fine. 1 copy of Lillie's Pokédoll. It counts as 30 HP basic. If it's in the active, you may discard it and put them on the bottom of your deck. You're not using this to tank, ironically. You can, but you're going to want to get back. What you use this for is, you can see this deck doesn't play Tate and Liza. It does play N, but it's not the same. So what you do is that once you run out of cards in deck, you can, Stoutland, Float Stone to Stoutland, and then retreat into Lillie's Pokédoll every single turn, and just keep yourself at 1 card. So you retreat to Lillie's Pokédoll, put it back into the deck, Stoutland comes back up, and then you Baby Doll Eyes, and that's how you do every single turn once you have 0 cards in deck. 1 copy of Rare Candy. Choose one of your basic Pokemon in play, put a Stage 2 from your hand that evolves into the Pokemon. So use this just to get a quick Stoutland out. Scoop Dog didn't need it, because Scoop Dog was just really heavy on the Herdiers. This deck not so much, because it plays the Alolan Vulpix anyway for consistency, and the Alolan Ninetales works great here. Use that to search out Rare Candy and an Evolution Incense to get an instant Stoutland. 1 copy of Field Blower. Flew over there. Choose up to 2 of Tool and Stadium cards in play and discard them. Obviously, Silent Lab's a big one. If your opponent Fabas your Chaotic Swell, you want to be able to have a 2nd out to getting rid of that, and is recyclable with Treasure Hunt as well as Bunnelby, so notable there. So you want to use that to get rid of Silent Labs that are in play that are threatening you. You can also get rid of stadiums. There's some that are tools. There's some tools that prevent all effects of attacks done to the Pokemon it's attached to. So yeah, Field Blower's cool. Captivating Pokeball. If your opponent reveals their hand, put any number of basic Pokemon you find there onto your opponent's bench. This is how, with Echoing Horn, put a basic Pokemon for your opponent's discard pile onto their bench. That's how you get yourself a Pokemon to lure up and trap. So, important to keep these in mind. Pokepuff is obviously worse, but it's more effective early on, especially on like a turn 1 if you can like nab a Dedenne from their hand. Echoing Horns, if they discarded the pieces, though people usually see the Echoing Horn coming, less so than the Pokebuff. 2 copies of Counter Catcher. You can only play it if you're behind prizes, and then you get a free Gust. Essentially the Lysandre effect, but you have to design an item, and you have to be behind on prizes. You're never taking prizes, so that's perfectly fine. 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher. Allows you to get your Pokemon back. You want to potentially have 2 Stoutlands in play, is probably the goal here. That way, if your opponent does have like an escape rope, you can just go into another Stoutland, and then, take the blow, but not get gusted. 3 copies of Verse Seeker. Put a supporter card from your pile into your hand. So use this to attack all your supporters. You can play a 4th one if you want. I think Lusamine makes up for that deficit, only having 3. 2 Float Stone. Obviously, I explained the Stoutland play, but also setting up a pivot for these Pokemon with bigger retreat costs if they do happen to get stuck, mainly Ninetales. Celebi can also make a good pivot though, so keep that in mind. 2 copies of Memory Capsule. If your abilities do get shut off by something like an Alolan Muck out of your control, Memory Capsule gives you an out to still be able to use your Sentinel, or use your Baby Doll Eyes with Sentinel active, so important to know. 1 copy of Chaotic Swell. Whenever either player plays a Stadium card from their hand, discard that Stadium after discarding this one, so it's a Stadium counter that keeps Silent Lab out of play. Silent Lab's a big bad news for this deck that's reliant on Time Recall. Obviously, the Alolan Muck can also be a pain, but Memory Capsule helps get around that. So then we have 2 copies of Capture Energy, provides colorless. Search your deck for a basic. Do need 4 energy. I wouldn't go any less than 4 because you do need to use Baby Doll Eyes above all else. Just noticed I forgot the Stoutland was a thing. Huh. Not a good card, sadly. 1 copy of Memory Berry. Same thing as Memory Capsule, just gives you another out to using your Baby Doll Eyes, because you have to use Baby Doll Eyes if your opponent sets up an Alolan Muck and you don't have Memory Capsule, or they got Field Blowered early on, your prize too many. Memory Energy is another out. 1 copy of Recycle Energy gives you outs to your Bunnelby as a tertiary attacker, and gives you Baby Doll Eyes that can't be discarded with things like Flare Grunt, but Baba's obviously an issue for this deck. So that's my Scoop Dog list. Or not Scoop Dog, this is the DOGMA, is what I call it. The Stoutland trapping deck, planning to keep your opponent active the entire game with something they don't like, while you slowly whittle at their resources with Mill. So, anyway, if you guys like this video, I'd appreciate if you check out my other deck lists. If you like tabletop, I'm doing that too. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.